Hello, everyone. My name is Laren Webb, and I am the Oral History Coordinator for the Washington County Historical Society. This interview on Tuesday, January 6, 2026, with PaulGraf is being conducted at the home and studios of Kimball Willard, 3223 East, 2000 South in St. George, Utah. Funding for the Oral History Program is provided by the St. George Recreation Arts and Parks Tax and the Washington County Recreation Arts and Parks Tax. We want to welcome Paul Graff here with us today. And what is your full name, Paul?
Paul Fenwick Graff.
Okay, thank you. Education-wise, why did you decide to go to Dixie College?
Well, it was here.
It's close.
I was raised in Santa Clara and went to elementary school there. Actually came to kindergarten in St. George. Rode the bus to kindergarten. And then after elementary school, came to Woodward School, and then Dixie High School. And so Dixie College was always just part of the plan.
Just a natural. Okay. Any influential mentors?
I learned a phrase years ago, and it's ages and stages. And every stage of my life, there was an influential mentor. And I could read some names if you like.
I'd like to hear some of the names.
Okay, all right. I'll just start at the bottom, the top of the list and go down.
Okay.
And starting in my youth, my grandpa Graff, I've just recently done some research about him and learned a lot about him that I never, ever knew. And I think my cousins are going to be excited to read about it.
First name?
John Henry.
John Henry Graff.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was actually the Washington County assessor back in the 1930s and 40s and into the 50s, and he was a Democrat. When I signed up to run for county attorney on the Republican ticket, my aunt was working as an assistant clerk, and she took my money. And she said, Dad would roll over in his grave if he knew you were signing up as a Republican. And I think she was right. He was a real staunch Democrat.
It's
all good.
Interesting.
Ages and stages, I guess. My Uncle Si, he lived with us in the home. He was my father's brother. And after the war, he actually inherited the home, but my mom and dad didn't have a place to live, and I'm talking about World War II. He and Dad had both been in the war, along with my Uncle Glendon, Spug, we called him, and Uncle Si just kind of shadowed me. It was kind of like a second father to me, and we did a lot of things together. He taught me how to ride a horse. He taught me how to work in the fields. He took me to basketball games. I remember when many things happened at Dixie College just because he took me there and we attended together.
Wow.
Okay, in addition to him, let me name some people in Santa Clara.
Okay.
Mary Lynn Reber, she was my blazer, my trekker leader, and Annalie Santz, Nellie Gubler, Arvina Hafen. LeGrand Fry was my scoutmaster and also my bishop. J. Claude Fry was the principal of the school in Santa Clara, and he was very influential. Arlo Hafen, also a teacher, then a principal, and then a bishop. Dale Gubler, also a bishop and a stake president, and he influenced a lot about me. I remember as a young man working in the fields, and it seemed like in Santa Clara when there was a big project to be done, like in the fields when we were getting silage off, Dale would show up with his truck, his silage truck, and help us, and others would do the same thing. Dale led by example. And in my education, I've got Victor Fry. He helped me get my first job as a school teacher, kind of in an indirect way, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Gary Wayne Graff at Cedar City. I don't know if you knew him. He was a cousin, but he also was an institute teacher up there. Very, very influential, helped a lot of us just learn the gospel. I remember as a young boy when he came home from his mission, they were just learning some LDS tools to teach the gospel of Jesus Christ, the restored gospel. And Gary Wayne had learned some lessons that were question and answer. And Brother Brown or Mr. Brown is how they started, and then they came to Brother Brown. But Gary Wayne gathered a group of us together in Santa Clara and taught us those discussions. I probably was only 10 or 11 years old at the time. Bob Moss was very influential in my life. Harold Hiskey, if you know that name, he was professor at Cedar City, accounting. Ken Benson, I don't know if you knew Ken Benson.
No, I didn't.
He weighed about 350 pounds. He had moved to Cedar City to be a dance instructor. He had graduated in PE, and I worked for him. He was over student activities, and I worked in the student union there. Bruce Hafen, Jim Backman, he was a law professor at BYU along with Bruce, and then some here professionally that I knew that I wrote down: Eric Ludlow, Judge Don Tibbs over in the 7th District, Judge Phil Eves out of Parowan, and Judge Louis Trevort and Judge Robert Braithwaite. Those were judges that I truly admired and respected and spent a lot of time in front of. Ron Thompson, Jerry Lewis, Murray Webb, if you know him.
I do.
Kurt Young, Royden Christian, Beulah McAllister, Dean Gardner, Lynn Gardner, Pat Nolan, Jim Shoemate, and Scott Johansson, and I could add more. But
That is so
more than
that's
what
so
you
neat.
need.
I'm really impressed that you took the time to talk about these mentors, these people who have really influenced your life for good.
They were
Okay.
good people who just set a great example.
Yeah. Okay, so why did you decide to attend Brigham Young University and then transfer to Southern Utah State College? And of course, what experiences at these two educational institutions stand out?
Well, the decision to go to BYU was easy. My grandfather Smith had gone there. He graduated from Dixie and then went up to BYU. And I knew about that. My mom was actually born in Provo. And then my older brother, had gone to BYU. After his mission, he went up there and he rented a home from a fellow whose son lives in Santa Clara. And I just followed that route. You know, there were a group of us after Dixie College that said, let's go up and be roommates and live in that home or one that he had through the block. And we did that. I don't know if you know the name Fred Gerlach. Fred and I had debated together on the Dixie College debate team. And it was just a lot of fun for us to be together and to spend time together up there.
Now, he was at BYU?
He was a Dixie College guy who had gone to BYU.
Okay.
We went together in 1968, 69. We were together at Dixie, and then we went up to BYU together.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was.
So you were there 1 year, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Mel
then-
Whitwer was there, and some guys from Eastern Nevada were there, southeastern Nevada, from Panaca and Pioche. Good little group of guys. We just enjoyed one another.
But for some reason, you decided to transfer to Southern Utah State College.
It's about fishes and puddles. I was a little tiny fish in a great big ocean at BYU. I could go all day and not see anyone that I knew, and it was kind of hard for me. I was used to being in a place where everybody knew me and I knew everybody, and that was something that was really important for me. I didn't have a car, so I was walking from an off-campus place that I lived onto campus and then walking back home again afterwards, and just never saw anybody I knew. And it was hard. It was a lonesome year. And when I came home that year, well, a couple of things. I had a teacher by the name of Reed Blake. I'm talking about his son, Dr. Reed Blake, who taught social psychology at BYU. And I took a class from him, and in that class he mentioned the fact that there are choices we can make in our life that make the difference. And he said, two choices that generally don't coincide, don't go together. You can choose where you want to live and raise your family, or you can choose where you want to go to earn your millions or money. And they usually don't go together. You usually don't get to live where you're going to make your money, and vice versa. And I thought, well, Dan, I want to raise my kids in Santa Clara. I've loved growing up in Santa Clara. And that decision was kind of made at that time. And I thought, I know what it takes to live in Santa Clara. You aren't going to make a lot of money, but you are going to have a great experience in life.
Okay, so you decided to go to Southern Utah State College because it was smaller, more intimate, more personal.
Yeah, but more than that, a lot of the Santa Clara boys were going to Southern Utah State College, and that BYU is on a semester system, and state schools were on a quarter system. So in April, when I finished at BYU, I came traveling home to Santa Clara and stopped in at Cedar City to see some of my friends who were still in school there, and just asked them about the school and what they thought about it and how they enjoyed it. And I think that was probably the greatest decision of my life, my education life for sure, to leave BYU and to go to Cedar City to school.
Okay.
I learned later that Cedar City places, percentage-wise, more graduates in graduate school than any school west of the Mississippi.
That's impressive.
Very.
What year did you graduate, and what degree did you obtain at that time?
I graduated from SUSC in 1972, and I had a major in sociology and a minor in speech and a minor in German.
Okay. I got to backtrack a little bit. We're talking about Dixie College.
Right. I was always oriented to going on an LDS mission, okay? And at that time, we couldn't go on a mission until we were 19 years old. So I had a year between high school graduation and the mission field. And I took that year and went to Dixie College. And then as soon as I got home from my mission, I also went to Dixie College for a year so I could get my associate's degree. And that was an associate's in science. And used that basically to waive the need to do the undergrad classes that most undergrads have to do. I could focus more to what I was going to graduate in.
Okay, thank you. So after you graduated, I understand you were a teacher and a coach at Hurricane High School in the Washington County School District from 1972 to 1975. What subject did you teach, and what sport did you coach, and what experiences stand out for you?
Probably the first experience that's really significant for me is the fact that it was an August afternoon, early in August, and I was hauling hay in the field behind my mother and dad's house, bucking bales up onto the truck, and my mom came out and waved at me, hollered and waved, and said, "You've got a phone call." And I said, "Can I take it later?" And she says, "Well, can you meet with someone at the district offices at 1:30?
Wow, just like that.
Yeah, and I found out later that Wayne Edwards, the principal of Hurricane High School, needed someone to assist Wes Christiansen in coaching football. And I needed to be ready to go within a couple of days. And they were already doing their 2 days, and so he needed me there to blow the whistle for him, and that's basically what I did.
And what did you teach, though?
I taught English literature, American and English literature, and then I taught history, U.S. history and world history.
Wow.
And
but you were only there for 3 years, so
I was.
What happened to change your direction as to deciding that you wanted to move somewhere else to, and then of course got into law?
Yeah, my direction, my trajectory was always law.
Okay.
I wanted to teach. I liked to cover all the bases. When I graduated from Cedar, I not only had a teaching certificate for the secondary school systems, but I also had a teaching certificate for the church education system. Okay. And I had done student teaching in both of those. And I was ready to go. Of course, I wasn't married at the time that I graduated from, so this CES was out the window. They later came to me and said, while I was teaching in Hurricane, they said, "If you can be married by September, we'll hire you." I said, "Well, I don't know if that's going to work."
Oh, God.
So we passed on that one. But when BYU Law School came available, I just felt that's where I needed to be. But my Uncle Darrell, my mother's brother, had graduated from law school in Washington, D.C., and he was, at that time, in the early 1960s, he was the Attorney General of the state of Arizona. And he really wanted me to come to Arizona and study law and go into practice with him, which I looked at. That was very tempting. I went down, I went on campus with him at Arizona State, and that's the first time I'd ever seen someone in a bikini in high heels walking around a college campus, Arizona State. That for a young man, that was enticing. And then
Well, tell me why you decided on law.
on law.
Yeah.
Well, Dad
Why
was
did you become interested in law?
well, Dad was a highway patrolman, and I grew up sitting around the table hearing stories about everything that was going on in the criminal world in Washington County. At that time, the highway patrol was kind of the radio communications for many of the departments in the area, sheriffs and highway patrol and the FBI. When they came to St. George, they would touch base with the way stations and the radio people there, just because they needed to communicate with each other and know who was on call or who was available if there were issues that occurred. I remember when he came home and told us about 2 FBI agents who had come to town, and they were going out to the DI Ranch near Mataqua, and they'd just go out and surveil what was going on out there. I don't know if you remember the 1950s and 60s around here, but
I
the
do.
DI Ranch got its name from Desert Inn, which is the
yes.
name of the motel in Las Vegas that it's associated with. Anyway, there were a lot of exciting things that were happening, I thought. And Dad was an interesting police officer, very straight down the line, follow the law kind of guy. And I remember one New Year's Eve after he had been to a department party on Cedar Mountain with Mom, how disgusted he was that some of the people that were there who were officers actually had been drinking and drove their patrol cars home under the influence, and that just ignited something in him. It was not right, and there shouldn't be a double standard. I kind of took that in. As we get on in this interview, you'll understand some of the decisions I made and maybe the foundation for those. But I think Dad was probably the biggest impetus, and Uncle Darrell would have been secondary. And then debating. When I was a debater, I did that in high school as well as in college, Dixie. And Dad encouraged me to go and attend court as a spectator, and I did that. And I remember watching J. Harlan Burns and Charlie Pickett go after each other in a homicide case that happened here in Washington County.
Oh, gosh.
And I remember, one of the things I remember most clearly, the jury was in the box and they were to my left, and I could kind of see them, but I was almost seated in a position that I was seen as though I were in the jury. And this is the new courthouse. By new, I mean now it's the county administration building, the old one. But at that time, it was just brand new. And I remember watching during the peak time in Charlie's argument or cross-examination when J. Harlan Burns dropped his crutches, accidentally knocked them over, and so the whole jury then swung and looked at him instead of listening to the jury. I mean, it was just...
Wow.
Yeah, it was something that he would have held an attorney in contempt for when he got on the bench. But in those early days, there were all kinds of interesting tactics that were going on. It was interesting to me. It was an arena that I could deal with, that I could enjoy.
Okay. So why did you choose to attend J. Reuben Clark Law School at BYU?
Because I was accepted.
Okay, that's a good reason.
We've got to talk about that.
That's a good reason.
My first year the first year they were a school, I applied to all 4 schools, the 2 in Utah and 2 in Arizona, okay? And then the next year I thought, I didn't get accepted to any of them. And I learned later that every year has a different acceptance entry level. And so how you match up with the rest of the applicants makes a difference that year, but not necessarily for succeeding years. The next year I applied and was on standby at BYU. The first year I didn't even come close to the requirements that were there, the grade point average or the score on the LSAT, those kind of things. A lot of guys wanted to go to BYU Law that first year especially, and a very impressive class. By the second year, I was on standby, and I didn't know what that meant, but I learned it meant that there were 10 of us that were placed on standby, and if someone from the class decided to go to another school, or just they couldn't go that year, then they would drop out and we would be selected to take their spot. Well, I wasn't selected to take the spot that year, but the next year, I didn't apply anywhere. I figured my law school days were over. My tenure was coming up for teaching in the school system, and I was more than happy where I was. I loved teaching. I loved the students at Hurricane High School. I was content to be there the rest of my life. And I got a letter, and the letter said, "Would you like to come to law school?" And I thought, well, wait a minute. And I read on, and it said, we reviewed the applicants who are being admitted this year and realized that many of you on standby last year have better qualifications than some of those that are being admitted this year. And if you're interested, we'll give you a place in our class. Well, hello. Why not? I was single. Everything just was working. I actually was trying out a car. Do you remember those 240Zs? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was trying out one of those, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. And I had to turn it back in and say, I'm not going to be buying this. I'll be driving a clunker for a while yet. And
so you got accepted.
Law school.
What year did you graduate?
I started in 77 for the class of, or 75 for the class of 78, but some interesting things happened. After the first year of law school, I got a summer job clerking for Ron Thompson in the Washington County Attorney's Office. And the next year, he told me that he didn't have funding for that position, which I'm sure he didn't. And my wife, at that time, I also got married at the end of that first summer, and my wife was pregnant the next summer, and she was from Provo. Her mother lived in Provo. Hello, you'd have to be really stupid not to want your wife to be close to her family, with that first child especially. And my oldest daughter was born in Provo. And because I was going to be in Provo that summer, I did clerkships, worked for people up in that area, but I also went to summer school. By going to summer school, I was able to take some of the classes that I needed to have in order. In law school, you have to have so many classes in class, so many subjects in class that you take on campus. And I fulfilled those for one semester during the summertime. So by December, I was finished and through with law school, and December of 77. And
so when did you graduate?
In the class of 78.
Class of 78.
So technically, I graduated in December of 77. I studied for the bar in January of 77. I took the bar in the end of February of 78, January of 78, and then February of 78. When I walked with my class in April, I was already a member of the bar. I had passed the bar exam, and I was a member of the bar. The next week, I was sworn into the bar and came back to St. George. And the next week, in May of 78, I signed up to run for county attorney.
Okay, but let's go back a little bit.
Have I lost you there?
Because my understanding is you went into practice with attorneys Ralph Atkin and J. MacArthur Wright before you became a county attorney. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so tell me about that.
That's correct. Okay.
So you graduated, you got your state bar, right?
Yeah.
And then you went to work for
No, I could work for them as a law clerk until I got my bar license.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so I started working for them. I opened an office with them in December of 77 after I was graduated from school.
From school?
Yeah.
But before you'd gotten your
I couldn't act as an
before
attorney.
you admitted as to the state bar.
Right. I couldn't act as an attorney. I could only be a law clerk until I got that license. And once I got that license, then they could bill me out as an attorney.
Okay, so you were both a law clerk and then became an attorney with Atkin and MacArthur Wright.
And each one of those, when I'd visited with them, they each says, we've got room for I could use a half-time attorney with me. And I thought, well, you guys need to get together. And so I talked to them about that, and they decided to form a partnership at that time. And they did. And then after I left, they stayed as a partnership a little bit longer. Primarily because, number one, Ralph is a Republican and Mac is a Democrat, and because Mac's a Democrat, he attracted a particular case. You've heard of the Downwinders? Mm-hmm. That case. I remember the day that, oh no, I can't think of his name. Udall.
Stuart Udall.
His brother. His brother was an attorney out of Phoenix and walked into our office and said, I'm looking for a place to have here in St. George where we can refer people. And that's how it started.
Okay, so let me go back. I'm sorry, I still need to
okay.
clarify.
That's okay.
So what time period did you work for Atkin and MacArthur Wright before you became an county attorney? I just need to make, we need to
That
make
year.
sure we get that.
1970, from December of 77 until December of 78.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what led you to run for Washington County Attorney?
They encouraged me. They thought it was good publicity.
Who's they?
They, Ralph and Mac.
Oh,
For their office. Not everybody knew that they were formed as a partnership now and practicing law together. And also for me, most of my friends down here thought I was still teaching school. And so to me, it seemed like some pretty good free publicity.
Okay, so what years did you serve as Washington County Attorney?
I was sworn in January of 79 and was there until 91.
Okay. What civil duties and responsibilities did you assume while serving as Washington County Attorney?
Well, the county attorney's office is divided into two aspects primarily, civil division, criminal division. And I learned very quickly that it's easier to hire somebody to do criminal prosecution work than it is to handle the civil division because it's generally looked at as less exciting, not quite as brilliant, not quite as exciting as the criminal stuff. And so I took the civil stuff. I liked working with the county commission. I liked working with the planning commission and being involved on that side of the fence, and handled criminal cases as they came along on occasion.
Okay. Okay, so what experiences in that capacity stand out for you?
I need to add something here.
Okay.
Part of that civil work was something that the county attorneys throughout the state were doing for the Office of Recovery Services. And the Office of Recovery Services was operating with matching funds. They got federal money, but they had to have a certain match from the state legislature in the state, Utah, and then they hired county attorneys basically to do their child support recovery. And they did that under Ron Thompson, and they did it for me, or I did that work as well for the first 2.5 terms. Then David Wilkinson came along as Attorney General and said, you know what, if I had the recovery services work, I could get more funding and I could expand my office. And he did that, and he brought the funding in and put it in the education division and had all of his education attorneys doing recovery services work as well.
Interesting.
So later, when it came back around, when I went to work for the AG, it was a natural fit because I'd done that work already.
Okay.
And I had the staff to do it.
Okay, so what criminal cases did you and/or your office handle during the 4 terms you served in the Washington County Attorney's Office?
You know what? This one was really hard. There were a lot of cases that went down. I remember saying every year in the county attorney's office is worth 10 years of experience anywhere else. It's just unbelievable. The cases, the types of cases. As I reflected on some that I was involved in, of course, one of the early big ones for me was when Eugene Sales Jones was the sheriff, and he was prosecuted. I referred that for beating up a prisoner in the jail, and I referred that case to the Attorney General's office. I just said, I don't want to handle this. I can't handle this. There's an apparent issue here. And the Attorney General came back and said, we will take this case on one condition. And that condition was that I sit at counsel table with their prosecutor. I said, I'll do that. And having told you about my dad and how I was raised, you can understand how, yeah, that is an important issue. I learned a lot out of that case. Gene was a good man, and he, you know, it was an unfortunate circumstance what happened there, but he fought it and won, and the jury came back with a not guilty verdict. They passed a note to the clerk that they wanted read when the not guilty verdict was read to Gene, and it said basically, don't do it again. You know, not guilty, but don't do it again. Okay. And I was satisfied with that. I felt like he was elected by the public in Washington County. They're the ones who should make that decision. And I was, you know, content with that.
Any other particular criminal cases that stand out?
One that comes into my mind, and I can't remember the name of the defendant right now. He spent time at the Utah State Prison. Was a child abuse case where a father was molesting his children, and it was out of Colorado City. And I interviewed 14 of his daughters. He had 24 daughters, and I interviewed 14 of them, and of those 14, about 10 or 12 had been molested. The reason it came forward is because his oldest daughter had been sexually abused by him, and she was now married, and the memory of that sexual abuse was disrupting her marriage. She was having a real hard time being committed in this marriage with that memory. Every time they tried to be intimate, bad thoughts and memories would come back to her, and so she thought, you know what, if I can do something to protect my sisters, I need to do it. And she came forward, and it was a tough situation. I think we had a tight enough case that when the time came, he basically pled guilty and tried to negotiate something. He negotiated that he would go to the sex offender unit at the Utah State Mental Hospital, and the idea was that he would go into that sex offender unit and go through these 5 steps that they have and be out and be back home soon. Well, he didn't understand who it was that was going to be judging him there in the mental health unit, and these guys were sex offenders themselves. And they listened to his story and said, you're not getting out of here. You're going to be here a long time. After a couple of years there, he realized that they were right, that he didn't want to change his ways, and they weren't going to give an inch. I mean, they knew what was happening in his head, and they knew what was happening to those victims, and they didn't want to let him out. And he came back and said, I had to be out of prison by now if I would have just gone that route. And so that's what he asked, is to be sentenced to prison and not have to go back to the state mental hospital.
Okay. Do you remember the Daryl Wessendorf case? It involved handling a rattlesnake. Do you remember that case? Okay.
Tell me a little more about it.
It was in Tokerville, and he was playing around, had found a rattlesnake, and so he apparently picked it up and put it in his truck, and then took it back to a home. He was basically in an apartment, but the apartment was part of a house, and there was a child there. And somehow he wrapped the snake around the child's neck, and it bit the child, and they transported the child to Dixie Medical Center, where the child died. Yeah. And he was tried for, I don't know whether it was involuntary manslaughter, but I thought maybe I remember the case quite distinctly because I heard it on the scanner, and I was, as a reporter, I went down. I was going to go down. I don't know that I went down, but I remember that case distinctly. And
yeah.
So I don't know if you remember that
I don't
case.
remember the details of it. That was not my case.
Okay.
And I had a policy that when an attorney got assigned a case, I didn't carry the briefcase for them. They made decisions. They moved forward. They had full ability to do that. And but I remember just what you've said triggers my
Okay.
memory on it. But I
And
don't know the
then
details.
the Playhouse Bar murders that took place in Cedar
Cedar
City,
City.
but the case was tried in Washington County. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I remember a lot of things about that.
Okay.
That was, I got a phone call at 1:30 in the morning from Ken Campbell, who was the sheriff at that time, and he just told me what had gone down up in Cedar City, and I knew one of the victims since she was a little girl, and it was tragic. It was sad. It hurt deeply, and it impacted that family.
Eventually, the suspect was sentenced here, but then he also was sentenced down in Oklahoma, if I remember, after he was involved in the murder of a cab driver, and was, as my understanding, he was sentenced to death down there, but he was sentenced to life in Utah. Do you recall that? Anything about that?
Are you confusing it with another case?
No, it was I wish I could remember his name, but he was,
Douglas.
yeah, Douglas K.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about Douglas K.
Okay.
And maybe there was another individual. I am probably
I
getting
think the
confused.
Oklahoma case is.
The Oklahoma case was involved. It was another suspect, I think, involved with Douglas K. Am I right?
There were four.
There were four
2 men
suspects.
and 2 women.
That's
And-
right. And Douglas K. was the one that was sentenced here in Utah. The other suspect that was involved, there were four. There were two guys and 2 girls, right?
Uh-huh.
And one of them ended up being sentenced down in Oklahoma. I think that's right.
That could be.
Does that sound right to
That
you?
could be.
Okay.
I don't know. I was not a prosecutor on those cases.
Okay.
So I was like you. I was in the peanut gallery watching.
Yeah. Okay. Any other cases that stand out?
No, none. Well, there are. If you want to ask about them, maybe I could remember some of them. But
No, we can move on.
wait, there's one case that does stand out because deer hunt weekend is when it happened. There was a chop shop in Salt Lake on Beck Street.
Oh, yes. I remember this case.
And the defendant that we had down here had, after a semi-truck had been stolen up there and been broken down, the engine came to St. George. And it was in a U-Haul trailer, and a pickup truck had dragged it down the state, and then they left it in a particular place here in St. George. And we watched it over the weekend just because we wanted to know who was coming up from wherever to pick it up and to take it away. Lowry Snow was the lead prosecutor on that case. Did a great job, and his investigation was really good. But later, when Lowry left my office and then I stood in as lead prosecutor, Gil Athay was the defendant's attorney, and he just came over to me and said, I don't know what it is, but my client is really scared of you. And yeah, that's what I thought to me. And anyway, his client was a great big guy, but he was nervous about what was going to happen to him. He ended up serving most all of his time in the state of Texas, which I would be scared of me too if I knew I was going to go there.
Okay, so what was the size of your civil and prosecution staff during the 4 terms you served in the Washington County Attorney's Office, and how did the office function?
Okay, when I first came into office, I had myself as full-time prosecutor and attorney and a half-time prosecutor, Steve Snow.
Okay.
And Steve had worked there the year before for Ron Thompson, and then when I came in, I talked him into staying on for a half a year.
Did it grow, is I guess of what I'm asking,
It
because
did
of
grow.
population?
It did grow, but not what happened later. I mean, what happened later, the management of that office became really difficult. We've had some great county attorneys, Eric Ludlow and I want to say Burke, but I think that's the dad. No, Burke's the son. Okay, and Belknap, and he did a great job.
Okay.
But I had 3 attorneys when I left, and myself.
Okay. I understand while you were prosecuting a major criminal case, one of your secretaries and/or paralegal employees unethically and/or illegally provided pertinent information on the case to a defense attorney, which gave that attorney an unfair advantage. Could you tell us about that case and its resulting aftermath?
I can. I want to read let me lay some foundation for that.
Okay.
Question. Generally, when a confidential informant is used on a case, only the prosecuting attorney and the investigating police officer knew who that informant is. In this particular situation that you're asking about, the loyalty of the employee that was in the office had gone to the dark side, is my best way to describe that. And there was a defense attorney in town in St. George who had convinced that employee that it was in their best interest to assist in identifying and eventually neutralizing confidential informants used by law enforcement. And the tip actually first came to me from a law enforcement officer who suggested that someone in my office had asked him the name of an informant, and he wanted to know, the officer wanted to know if that was becoming a typical way that we were going to be handling confidential informants in the future. And I said, of course not. We'll stay the course on the way we've worked with them. And what we learned is that the defense attorney had someone in mind that could create methamphetamine for them. And by doing that, he then wanted to eliminate all of his business competition. And so he was using confidential informants that he could discover their names, either to discredit the confidential informants or to eliminate the person who was making methamphetamines for them. And in doing that, used an employee. As I reminisced on this question, I recall clearly I had a weekend to think about how it was going to be handled in the office the next time I was there. And I invited my wife to come to the office with me and to sit in my office while I visited with the employee. And I gave them a couple of options. And one option is they could get up and leave and nothing more would be said. The other option is I would write things up and proceed with termination procedures. And they packed their things and left. Haven't seen them since.
How did that impact your case, that case? Did it have any kind of a detrimental effect on the case itself?
It did not. There were 2 or 3 cases that were going on at that time that were kind of difficult to deal with. And it had a little bit of an impact on those cases. This happened just before I left the office, and that probably was the thing that pushed me out the door. I was distraught. It bothered me that there could be somebody working my office who would be disloyal to me and to the cause. I believed in what we were doing, and I could not understand that way of thinking. I will say this, in the things that were coming down at that time, from it I prosecuted a police officer and I prosecuted an attorney. And both of those, we had to give on one of them a little more than we usually would have done, just because it brought into issue some of the other information that we had.
Yeah, and we're talking about being held to a higher standard, right?
Yeah.
When you're in law enforcement, you're held to a higher standard.
And you should be.
And you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. While you served as a Washington County attorney, I understand you also had a small private practice, a law practice at 94 West Tabernacle Street in what's now known as the Book Bungalow in St. George. So were there any, civil, criminal, family law, estate planning, wills, probate, etc., any of that that stands out? Or was this just really a small part of, your private practice? And I
Well,
wasn't sure I understood how this worked.
well, I'm fascinated at the question because when I campaigned for county attorney on the first go-around, I said, I will have no private practice. And after that, when I was running the second time, I said, I didn't say anything. I didn't say I will have no private practice. I intended to maybe open an office and start a private practice with the idea of going that direction when the time came. And so that's when I opened that office, and in my second term, and I didn't pay the rent. I was so busy doing county attorney stuff, and so I closed it. But I did write a few wills, simple
Okay.
wills, and
So how long was it? Probably just a few months?
his grandpa's was one of them. And mostly it was people who were older, living in my neighborhood, who just wanted a simple will. And so I had the office there probably a year or two, three,
Okay.
but not very long.
Okay. What do you think led Utah Attorney General Paul Van Dam to offer you a position as an assistant Utah Attorney General working with child support cases in St. George in 1991?
Well,
By the way, he was a Democrat too,
oh, by the way, I know that.
and you were a Republican.
So let me share a couple of things with you. After he hired me, I said, "Did you get any pushback on hiring a Republican to work in the office?" And he said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did." And I said, "Who?" And he said, "It'll surprise you, Democrats in Salt Lake." Nobody in St. George was bothered by it, but some Democrats in Salt Lake thought he should have hired a Democrat in St. George.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think what brought him there. There's some other things you need to know. As you know, I was quite active in a lot of things dealing with county attorney, and one of those things had to do with prosecution counsel and the statewide association of prosecutors. And that particular year was sitting as the vice chairman of the prosecution council. And in Utah politics, there are two opposing forces. They're generally not talked about too much, but they're there. And that's Salt Lake versus everybody else.
Interesting.
And, well, look at the practice of law even. The third judicial district, the judges there have a little different mindset than the judges in the rest of the state. And the people there are a little, it's just a little bit different. Large city, urban, rural versus urban. And we recognized it in this association of counties. But what could we do? We couldn't cut off our nose to spite our face. Salt Lake County was the big county as far as money, and they could do a lot of programs that the rural counties couldn't do on their own. But we could do if Salt Lake County led the way, and we supported. We just had to make sure that Salt Lake went where we needed them to go as well, so it would benefit everybody in the state, not just one group. Paul Van Dam was the chairman of the Statewide Association of Prosecutors. I was the vice chairman that year.
Well, and that speaks highly, I think, of Paul Van Dam,
Oh.
who basically looked objectively, to select the best candidate for whatever positions were out there. At least that's just from what I'm seeing as an outsider.
I have nothing but highest regard for Paul Van Dam. Let me just read a statement that I wrote about him, if I can find it. Maybe I'll have to tell you. I told him when he hired me, I said, "I want you to know that I'll be loyal to you." Loyalty was a big issue for me right at that time, as we've discussed. And Paul said, "I don't expect you to be loyal to me. I expect you to be loyal to the law."
What a great answer. Powerful.
That's what
right?
I thought I'll walk to the ends of the earth with this guy. And I did. I did the best I could for him. I just have, like I say, the greatest respect for him.
Yeah. Okay. So what led you to accept the job? And you kind of pretty much answered that, but tell me just a little bit about your duties.
Okay, I was tired. I was really tired. 10 years as county attorney was a long time for me. We'd been running hard, and some of it towards the end, It was, you know, the gloves were off.
Yeah.
You know, what was dangled in front of me isn't what happened in the end. Okay, I understood. Okay, back up. I told you that the AG, David Wilkinson, had taken the Education Division and assigned them to do Office of Recovery Services work, child support collection. The county attorneys had been doing it, okay? And what was told me is that I would basically do the child support collection work for ORS, but also would do education work, and that I would be legal counsel for Dixie College.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you remember who was president of the college at that time?
What year? If you
Doug
tell me
Alder. I'll just tell you.
Oh, okay.
Doug Alder.
Okay.
We don't think alike. But that kind of concerned me a little bit, because I would like to believe that my politics, my political persuasion, that would have little to do with legal advice that I would give. And, you know, as I looked at my role with the county commission and the county planning commission, I was just to help them follow the law. And I never got an opportunity to talk to Doug about it. I'm not sure if he even remembers, but I was told later that that's why I didn't work for Dixie College.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh,
Okay.
there's a lot of undercurrents, Lauren. You know, now on this side of life, we can look back and we can talk about it, and with a little more understanding of some things.
Yeah. Okay. So, how long did you serve in that position, and where was your office located? If you can provide the street address,
Heck,
if not,
I don't know.
just
I can
generally
tell
speaking.
you where it was. My first office was in the Prince Memorial Building. Do you know the street address to that?
You're talking 100 East and
Yep,
about 150, 160 North,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
That's where the Office of Recovery Services was housed at that time.
Interesting. Okay.
And they provided an office for me and my staff there in their area. And then later, we moved into the new building that Steve Snow and David Newfer were in, there on 2nd East and 190 North or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Just across the street from the county attorney's office.
Yeah, I was going to say
So-
it had to have been pretty close to where the existing Washington County Attorney's Office is now, right?
No, the existing one now.
Oh, yeah, excuse me.
When they moved into that building is when I left the building with Steve Snow and that group, and went to the county attorney. With the county attorney, we took the 3rd floor.
Okay.
And in that one, and they needed someone to come and help them with the rent. And they weren't large enough to fill the whole building, and so we did that. And Recovery Services also went in there.
Okay. I understand you were elected president of the Utah Association of Counties in 1989, and that you served on a number of UAC committees and on the National Association of Counties. So how did that position come about, and what were your duties, and what highlights stand out for you?
Well, basically, you go to those meetings and you represent your area, and depending on if it's national, you represent the state of Utah. If it's Utah, you represent Washington County, but you also try to work out compromises that will help you all work together to accomplish your goals. And I really enjoyed that work. It was good. It was something that was positive and got me to Washington, D.C.
Wow,
And
that's exciting.
Yeah, it was. I went there for a number of years, every year in March, and would go to the meetings, and then in my spare time, I'd go walk around the mall and enjoy. And the mall being where the statues are and all the memorials for the United States government and people that have been famous and done good things. Yeah.
Okay. I understand you also served on the Washington County Children's Justice Center Board of Directors. And how did that position come about, and what were your duties?
There was a person named Richard Lambert, who was with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. And in the early 80s, we as an association of prosecutors decided that we wanted to bring him to Utah because we were seeing things that caused us concern. And what we were seeing was an increase in child abuse, child sexual abuse and crimes against children. And we needed his help because he had done it in California. We needed his help to come and to help us write some laws that would have some teeth to them, that we could stop that kind of stuff or at least slow it down. He came, the U.S. Attorney here hired him from the U.S. Attorney's office in California. And he came and joined forces with the Attorney General's office and all of the prosecutors in the state. And in 1983, 84, somewhere in there, we rewrote the laws that dealing with that child abuse. I knew of the Children's Justice Centers from their inception. As soon as the law was passed, I started talking to the county commissioners and gathering the groups together that we would need here in Washington County. And I was not the only one. There were many of us that were on that team. And it's a good thing. Ironically, tomorrow I'm going to go back to the board.
Wow.
And serve there.
This board to
Children's
serve on
Justice
that?
Center, St.
When,
George, Washington County.
What day? Or
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, January, what is today?
January 6th.
6th,
So
yeah,
January 7th.
7th.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
That's really neat.
It's long. I stepped away back then.
Wow.
I stayed on as county attorney after I left while I was with the Attorney General's office because I had the continuity. But I passed the baton to Bob Smith, who came into the AG's office here in St. George to work on child protection cases. And he carried the torch then for that group, but the county attorney came back into it as well. And it's a great vision. It really is. There's no need through the process for children to be abused a second time because someone doesn't know how to question them or because somebody doesn't know how to meet their needs as a victim. Yeah. And I have some strong feelings on that.
I think that's so neat. Well, good for you, Paul. What other law-related organizations have you served on during your legal career, and what experiences stand out for you? There were some other things that I noticed, and I just kind of left that general because I thought there were some other organizations that you were involved with, but...
There are. I was on the county board of Washington County Bar Association. I was on their board of directors, and we used to choose subjects to have for education purposes so we could meet our CLE. I also was on the mid-year meetings bar here in St. George. The Utah bar have mid-year meetings. I got them started coming to St. George, and I believe in that. I believe in bringing people here. And one of the things that I did when I was chairman of it was I went to Zion Park, and not a lot of people know this, but you can go to Zion Park and say, I'm going to have a group coming here from out of town. They've probably never seen the park before. Can we get them free passes for the day? And the superintendent approved that, and so all somebody had to do is show up at the gate and say, I'm with the Bar Association, and they'd let them in. And I think a lot of lawyers hadn't been to Zion Park, or at least their families hadn't, and they got to spend a day at Zion while they were here for bar meetings. They came a day earlier, stayed a day later, and Zion's an awesome neighbor to have.
It really is.
We just don't use them enough. Yeah. They're good people to work with.
Okay. How did you become an adult leader with the Boy Scouts of America?
That's a real easy one. I was serving as an LDS bishop at the time, and I had a stake president who went to Wood Badge. And when he came home, Wood Badge is
explain that a little bit.
Boy Scout adult leadership course.
Okay.
Teaching adult leaders how to be Boy Scout leaders. And it's a week-long course, and you're camping out during the entire week. And he challenged all of us to go to Wood Badge. I had been an avid scout, Boy Scout as a youth, but I had been more concerned about other things as an adult. And when he gave us that challenge, I took it and took my counselors with me. At one time, we had 15 people in our neighborhood, our ward, that were Wood Badge trained, we were all on the same page when it came to working with our youth, and I think we did a pretty fair job. We had some incredible young people come out of that neighborhood.
Okay, so in what capacity did you serve locally, and what was it like working with the youth and other adult leaders? Were you in the Utah Parks Council?
I was on their executive board for a time. I also was in our district here. I was the district chairman when we had to divide the district because we were getting so large, and counseled with Bruce Stuckey at the time. He was also on the executive board, but
Didn't they have an office in a basement of the Dixie Academy building at one time?
Yes, they did. And I helped them get there, and it was important. You know, they needed someplace, and we wanted a store here. We wanted to have a facility that boys could go in and get information on merit badges or on rank advancements or whatever they wanted, and get also copies of those, you know. So yes, we had a store there in that basement.
I thought it was great.
It was.
Okay, any other experiences that stand out?
You wouldn't know this. I was also a member of the Kiwanis Club, and I was the club president at one time. And before that, I had been in a Circle K club, which is a Kiwanis affiliate for college students. And when I was at SUSC, I had been in the Circle K club and was elected the governor for Utah and Idaho Circle K, that district. And that's where I really got my first travel experience for training. And we went to now I'm drawing a blank. Valley Forge.
Oh, wow.
I know. It was
That's
just
incredible.
It was. It was absolutely incredible.
Well, wait a minute. Was this with the Boy Scouts or
No,
with Circle
this
K?
was with Circle K.
This is Circle K.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this was during my college years in 1972, 73, somewhere in there. No, it would have been before that. It was 71, 72, that year.
Okay.
And that's when we went back there. And it was just an amazing experience. To go there and to be taught about service and about Kiwanis clubs international, and to be taught about how important it is to give in service. And I believe in service. I think that's what life's about.
Right. Let's go back to the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
What years did you serve with the Boy Scouts?
Oh, good grief.
Approximately.
I'm
if
still
you
serving
remember.
with the Boy Scouts.
You're still serving with the Boy
I
Scouts,
am.
really?
Yeah, I'm on the troop committee in the troop in Santa Clara Ivans area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive, especially since the LDS Church separated from the Boy Scouts.
Right.
Was it 2018?
I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway.
I at the time they separated, I was the district commissioner, and I just felt like I had grandsons coming along, and I wanted them to have a scouting experience, and they could still have it if they could find someone who would sponsor them. And so
I think that's awesome that you're still doing it. That's
we
great.
found a sponsor, and my grandsons go on campouts every month, and I quiz them about them and ask them how they're doing, and they love scouts, and they love going on campouts, and they have fun. And I know once I had to go to a meeting to give a talk about about George Washington and about Jacob Hamlin, and they have a couple of similar incidences in their lives, even though you wouldn't know that, but where they were shot at and holes in their clothing, but they were not harmed. I went, took my grandsons, I said, "Do you want to go with me?" And they says, "Well, who's in charge of it?" And I told them, and they went because they knew the people that were in charge would always have good food.
Well, that's good. Food's important, right?
For a Boy Scout, that's
Yeah,
incredibly important.
it is.
They didn't hear a thing I said, but they really enjoyed the food.
Okay, so you probably answered this next question. What other civic or religious organizations have you participated in, if any?
I think I've covered most everything there.
You're also involved as a St. George Temple ordinance worker, is that correct?
That is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What experiences stand out from your participation in these organizations?
You know, give you some foundation. I was called as a bishop in about 1982, and I had been county attorney for 3 years. During my early time as county attorney, I was mad. I was mad at these people who would break the law, and I just wanted to pound them. And I wanted a pound of flesh, if you can use that terminology. And when I was called as bishop and sustained and set apart, a change came upon me, and I truly felt a change of heart, and it softened me towards the defendants that I was working with in the courts. And I think if there's any one thing that has changed me, it was that calling as it applied to people that I would then work with in the courtroom.
So it's like justice and mercy.
Yeah, that's probably a good description. Yeah.
Okay.
I was certainly filled with mercy.
Okay. Where and when were you born?
I was born in St. George in 1947, April 22nd, 1947.
Okay. And who else was in your family?
I have a brother named Jan. He's older. He's deceased now. He's 4.5 years older than I, and then I have 3 younger sisters.
Okay. What did your neighborhood and or community look like outside of your family?
It was one main street in Santa Clara that a highway, a major artery from Los Angeles to the rest of the world came through.
We're talking Highway 91.
Right. I lived right on Highway 91. And at any time of the day or night when a semi-truck would go by, our windows would rattle. And it was fun. But you had to look both ways before you crossed the street because there was a lot of traffic at times. And especially if there had been something happened down on the deserts between here and L.A., and the traffic had been stopped up, and then it started coming through, and it came through just like being on a major freeway today.
Wow.
It was fun. Off the main highway, though, for me, we owned a major portion of the creek bottom, the river bottom in Santa Clara. I lived to go to that river bottom. And I hunted arrowheads, and I hunted other things down there and looked for animals and built things out of mud and whatever you do,
Yeah.
And my mom could never figure out how I could fall in the ditch and come home soaking wet, but my shoes never got wet. That's because I didn't want to get them wet, but I took them off before I fell in,
Yeah. Okay,
Just
makes sense.
accidental, yeah.
Where did your ancestors come from?
My dad's side of the family were Swiss, and they came from Switzerland directly to Santa Clara in the
1861?
60s. Yeah, and a second group in 1865.
Okay.
And my mom's side of the family, she grew up in St. George, and her mother was a seg miller, and did we just double connect there? Her father was a smith, and that smith line was in Arizona. He was raised in Snowflake, and then they backtracked through to New York.
Oh.
And it just follows church history.
Okay. Describe your grammar school and high school years.
I really loved those years. They were good years. School was easy for me.
Which elementary school?
Santa Clara
Elementary.
Yeah.
And you went to Woodward Junior High?
I did.
And then Dixie High School.
Right.
What were your interests in those school days? Anything that stood out?
Anything outside the window. It was, you'd look out and just imagine how life would be if you weren't in school. But I liked school. School was easy for me. I enjoyed it. Math in particular was easy. And I think like a math teacher like Grant Hafen that I had in 7th and 8th grade, oh my gosh, he just brought it home for me. And then later when I had Ralph Christian for trigonometry and geometry, it was all great. And then Walt Cox, when I was in high school, calculus, I still don't understand it, but I thought I did then.
Yeah, those are good teachers.
Yeah.
What were your hobbies and interests as a child? You talked about going down to the Santa Clara River and swimming, and
Yeah.
any other hobbies or interests?
Just whatever we had on the farm.
Okay.
I learned to ride a horse early on. The first time I really fell off was when I was about 5 or 6. We had driven some cattle from Santa Clara to the Ivans Bench, to a place that we had there where we would feed them for the winter. And on the way back, my uncle Cy asked me if I wanted to race. And I said, sure. And so he took off running, and the horse I was on knew instinctively what was happening. I didn't realize that she was a jumper. And so instead of going around sagebrush, she would go over the top of it. And as she jumped, I remember coming off the back end of her and seeing the hoof come by my face. Didn't hit me, but it was, knocked the wind out of me when I hit the ground.
Wow.
And that's my earliest recollection of falling off a horse when I was about 5 or 6.
Any particular sports during this time period that you were involved with, or not?
Marbles.
Okay, I love marbles.
And mumbledy peg. I always
Yeah.
carried a pocket knife. Interesting, I was on our committee for reunion committee for high school graduation, and Mary Ellen Everett Gonzalez was the chairman, and she had an envelope there that she was trying to get open, and I pulled out my pocket knife and handed it to her, and she said, "PaulGraf, I remember Mrs. Gibbons in kindergarten taking your pocket knife away from you at that time and telling you you couldn't have it until it's time for you to go home and not bring it back tomorrow." And she says, "You've always carried a pocket knife." Yeah, I have. My dad taught me that, and when you need it, you need it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so describe how you met and married your first spouse.
I worked summers at that time, I was working on the Arizona Strip as a firefighter. And on weekends, I would come in and go to Zion to see the scenery. And the scenery was not the mountains, not the canyon, but it was the girls working up there. And that's where I met her. She was working as a cabin maid at Zion.
What was her name?
Catherine Swenson.
Okay.
And that's a fun story. We actually knew each other for about 6 years before we got married. But that was during the time that I went to BYU, but I felt like I couldn't date her because I didn't have a car. And for some reason in my head, you had to have a car to date. And whether that's true or not, I'll leave that to others. But later on, we reconnected when I was there in law school, and we got married after the first year of law school.
Okay. What children or grandchildren came from this first marriage?
We had 5, Mary Ann, Jenny, John, Brian, and Becky.
Okay. And when did your first spouse pass away?
In 2010, it was in April.
Okay. How old was she at the time?
Well,
approximately.
Yeah, 59.
Okay.
59.
Describe how you met and married your second spouse.
Well, it was 2 or 3 years after Kathy passed, and the year after Kathy passed, my daughter Becky was graduating from UVU with a degree in history. And 3 of my older children had gone to the Jerusalem Center and studied there. And Becky, because she was at UVU, didn't think she would be accepted into that program, so she didn't apply. And so I said, why don't we take a trip for your graduation and go to Jerusalem, go to Israel and the Holy Land. And she bought into it, and so between the time of her student teaching and graduation, we went and had a great experience. When we got home, and on the year of her mother's death, my wife's passing, we were in the Garden of Gethsemane, and we were in the tomb. We went into the tomb in Jerusalem. But what brought me peace there, by the way, was Galilee. That just brought me a lot of peace. Anyway, we got home, and Mary Ann, my oldest daughter, who was still single, said, "Dad, let's go on a trip." When Becky got home, she met a guy, and by Christmas was married to him.
Wow.
And so Mary Ann said, Dad, let's go on a trip. It worked for Becky, maybe it'll work for me. And the second or third night, I said, okay, there's only one thing I want to see, and that's Ephesus. Everybody said at all the Roman ruins, they says, if you think these Roman ruins are awesome, you got to see what they're uncovering in Ephesus. And so we figured out a trip that would get us to Ephesus. And second or third night out, Mary Ann said, I thought there would be guys here for me, but there aren't. But there might be somebody for you. I said, no, that's not what this trip's about. I'm not looking, And that's what I thought. And you need to have Jenny here to tell this story because I love the way she tells it. It just strokes my ego like nothing else. But we've been married 13 and a half years now, and it's been a great marriage.
And her maiden name?
Her maiden name is Hunt.
Oh, Jenny or Ginny?
Virginia.
Virginia Hunt. Okay.
Yeah, so it's Jenny Virginia Hunt.
Okay.
And Jenny was raised in Indiana in a very small town, and we tell small town stories, and you don't know which town we're in, whether it's Santa Clara or Craigville. And we had come from that same background. And
But did you meet her in Ephesus?
yeah,
On
that trip.
Oh, and so was she on another tourism group?
She was in the same tour group.
Or in the tour-
It was
same
out of
tour
Salt
group?
Lake. Yeah,
Wow.
a group out of Salt Lake. But she lived in Fruit Heights at the time, and
And she was a widow as well, right?
she had been widowed for 24 years.
Wow.
She and her husband were stationed in Germany, and they had an air show, and there was an air show accident, and that was at now it's slipping me the name of the Air Force base, but 2 Italian jets hit in midair and just spread fuselage all over the tarmac. And her husband was a medevac pilot for the Air Force, and he was standing by his helicopter, and the fuselage and the fuel came down and just covered him, and he had severe burns. And they life-flighted him to San Antonio. His name was Kim Strader, and he had some roots in Delta and Salt Lake. And when she met him, it just connected for the two of them. They had 6 kids. One of them passed away the same weekend as the Teton Dam disaster when they were living in Idaho. And anyway, long story short, after their kids were born and after that disaster, she was alone for 24 years. She raised those kids. She didn't want to bring somebody else into the home, and that's understandable. Anyway, she's a good woman, just a good woman. And I'll tell you something that I've learned, and it's some things are not as important as we think they are, and other things are more important than we think they are.
Yeah.
And we just have to be able to feel and understand how that works.
Okay. So describe any important aspects of family life and raising your children.
Laugh together. Make sure that they know you love them. And I don't know what more you can say. I believe that families need to get together often as possible. And now, between the two of us, we have 10 children, and they range from Washington State to Washington, D.C., to Houston, Texas, to Rexburg, Idaho, and just all over the place. We have one that lives in southern Utah, and that's my son, Brian. And
that definitely creates some challenges, I bet.
Yeah, and it does. And so you have to entice them a little bit at first, and then make sure that they have fun when they get there.
Yeah.
If the grandkids can come and have a good time, and if the cousins love to be together, it flows really easy after that.
Okay. I understand you and your wife, Virginia Graff, donated a signature quilt to the Santa Clara Museum. How did that donation come about?
How did you find out about that?
I saw it on the internet, and I thought, this is so cool because I love the Santa Clara History Museum,
Have you seen the quilt?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe I have, but I don't remember. So tell me about it.
Okay, Elwin and Tona Prince, they're friends of ours, and they bought this quilt from a friend, and they said, we're going to put this up for sale. Would you be interested in getting it And I looked at it because they said, your mother's name's on it. Well, it isn't my mother. My mother's name was Beulah Smith Graff, but there was another Beulah Graff, and that's my father's sister.
Oh.
And when she was single and in the home, which is when this quilt was made, her name, Beulah Graff, is on the quilt.
Wow.
And my grandma's name's on the quilt.
My gosh.
And probably you've got ancestors on the quilt. I think it was the primary from every ward in St. George Stake and Zion Park Stake. And it was also people who served in key positions, faculties. I think the faculty for Woodward School is on there. But these names are just a snapshot in time in the 1930s.
Now, tell me again who made the quilt?
Well,
Or do we
my
know?
theory is Madge Cannon, who was my first grade teacher and was the first grade teacher for most of us that went through Santa Clara Elementary, she was also the stake primary president. And she had a best friend, Barbara Price. And Barbara worked for the Forest Service, I think, here in town. Anyway, Barbara was also had a quilting group that she that made quilts with, and I think Barbara made that quilt for Madge, and that it was a present to Madge to remember all of the primary workers in each ward throughout the stake and the adjoining stake, as well as leadership and teachers and other people in this area in that time period. And so we're talking of a time period when there were less than 5,000 people to be represented.
And how did you come into ownership or possession of it?
It's crazy. Madge had two kids, and one was boy and one was girl. And the girl, I think it was the daughter, it might have been a granddaughter, had the quilt up in Ely, Nevada. And it ended up in a storage unit up there. And then later that storage unit got cleaned, and when it got cleaned, the person who then would have the ownership on it sold it to Tona and Elwyn Prince.
Okay.
And they recognized names and had some interest in it. But when I saw it, it just, whoa, you know? And I said, there's only one place this can be. It needs to be where people can go in and see if their ancestors are named on there, because they might learn something about them they never knew before. And it was just really, really fun to get into it and to research it. And in doing that, that's where I learned about Madge being stake primary president. I didn't know that. I loved her as a teacher. She was awesome, you know?
Okay. I understand you're also a wood and clay sculpture artist. So how did that come about? And what is it about carving wood and creating clay statues that piques your interest?
I wish I knew how to answer that last question. When I was a kid at the barn, we always had a milk cow that gave plenty of milk, and we would take half of it for the family, and I then had to wait for the calves to strip the other half. And while they were doing that, I would pull out my pocket knife, and I would carve on the fence, the cedar post that held the shed up. And I made some nice horse heads and other things in that wood on those posts. And my mom apologized to me when they tore it down, because it got thrown away before she could get the cedar posts. But I just have always enjoyed that, looking at animals and seeing what you can do.
So you carve animal heads? Is that pretty much what you do, or?
That's kind of what I did. I came home from a wood badge course once after being a week camping, and I had carved a little bobcat with a tortoise shell. And my wife, Kathy, looked at that and said, "Whoa, that's not bad." And she went to Jerry Anderson and said, "Jerry, can I buy some sculpture classes from you, or material to give my husband for Christmas. She was always looking for something that I wouldn't think of, And I remember that year she gave me a block of clay and a piece of wood to work it on, and some tools. And
I
anyway,
thought that was really fun.
it was.
Right?
It is.
So what did you create from? I know you've done some sculpture. Is that right too?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do now, because sculpting is a lot easier than carving wood.
Okay, so tell me about the sculpting.
Okay. 2 or 3 that just come to mind quickly. I did a bear, the first piece that I did, a grizzly bear, and took it up to Jerry, and he looked at it and smiled and said, "I'll give you an E for effort." He was right. Jerry, I just adore Jerry. I think he's an incredible sculptor, and the fact that we've had him in southern Utah as long as we have, we're fortunate. He gets it.
Did he help you to improve?
Yeah.
Okay.
He later taught a class at Dixie College, an evening class. And I remember Del Parsons was in there with us, and my brother Jan was in there, and it was a full class. There were 25 or 30 of us that took it. And Dick Whitehead, I think, was in that class. Anyway, it was, Jerry is a good teacher too. But I think it drove him nuts to be tied down that much, But he gave some really great pointers and kind of mentored me in that area. And I've done a running buffalo. I used to sell them to the college, and they would buy them to give to their high-end donors.
Wow.
And I wanted to go to some of those guys and say, you don't have to give $1 million, you can just give me a couple of thousand, and that'd cover it, But it's been fun to do that. I did a bucking bull with a clown in front of it, and I like to capture motion if I can. I like to know where the muscles are on the animals, to know what would be pulling and pushing and how things go. And I just took one up to the foundry. Now, after Kathy passed away, it was really hard. Hope I can talk about it. I didn't start again until about a year ago, and Ginny has pushed me, has helped me do that.
Okay.
Bring it out, and I just took one up to the foundry a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And that's a fun one.
just
It's
so-
a race. It's a racehorse, and
wow.
with a jockey on it. And my neighbor came to me and says, I need you to do this for me. I want to give it to somebody special. And the name of the horse is Tom's Regret. Now, that in and of itself says a lot. Tom was the guy who wanted to give it to. Tom bought the horse, and then he regretted it as soon as he bought it. Because he says, I know it's going to be a loser. I know it's not going to do well. And it turned out just the opposite. It's been an incredible horse. And just one race won him $185,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, this horse has been just really, really good. But he just wanted a little sculpture to give him.
Wow, that's really neat.
It's good.
Okay, so as you look back over your life, what would you like to be remembered for?
Honesty. Straight up, I am what I am, and I'll try to always be transparent that way. And I want people to know they can rely on what I say, the truthfulness of it. And
Okay. If there's anything else you feel is important that I have not asked you, this is a good time to tell us about that.
there is something that you need to add to your list of questions.
Okay.
And it has to do with jobs. You didn't ask about jobs that I've had. And in my life, I started out my life in my working career working in the fields in Santa Clara and pulling onions and picking peaches and working in fruit stands and later on as a firefighter for agencies. And that's how I paid my way through school. I got to thinking about it. In high school with Mert Lovell, I worked in the library. At Dixie College with Elizabeth Beckstrom, I worked in the library. And at BYU, I worked in the library. At SUSC, I worked in the library. At the J. Reuben Clark Law School, I worked in the library.
Wow.
And so I love books. It drives my family crazy because you give me a book and I'm a happy camper, you know, and I just love to work around books. To me, there's something that's just really important to having a hard copy book.
Yeah, and I'll bet you, from all of those jobs, those small jobs, you learned the principle of work,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
in your life.
Here's one for you. My first day on the job at Dixie College Library, and Bob Dalton hires me, takes me back to the back room where Elizabeth Beckstrom is,
Oh, wow.
and he says, "Here's your boss."
You got to work for Elizabeth Beckstrom?
I said,
Wow.
I walked in and she said, "Hello, what's your name?" I said, "I'm PaulGraf." "Oh, yeah." And then she said, "I knew your grandparents on both sides.
Wow.
I know exactly what I should be able to get out of you. You better live up to it."
Oh my gosh, that's great.
And I thought,
So
oh
awesome.
gosh, you know,
Wow.
small town. That you can only do that in a small town,
Okay.
you know.
Well, we again want to thank Paul Graff for being with us here today. We also wish to thank Kimball Willard for providing his video recording studios and technical know-how for this oral history interview. This is the 27th oral history interview that I have conducted. Thank you for joining us.